Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Finley. I'm a COVID long hauler based in Kansas City, Missouri. I've got a support group on Facebook for COVID long haulers, and we decided we wanted to take more action on what's going on around us. But we wanted to do it in a way that provides accessibility to others. We know not everyone can attend a rally in person, whether it's a disability, whether it's an accessibility issue where maybe they have barriers to going, they don't have transportation, or it's too far. We want everyone to be able to participate in any way they can. So, in light of that, I don't like talking about myself a lot. So, I'm going to pass it off to Effie. She's the first of some really fantastic speakers today. So, Effie, take it away.
Hi, everybody. I'd say it's nice to be here, but the circumstances that's brought us all here are not that nice, but I'm still delighted to be here with all of you. I've had MECFS since 2017, so didn't get it via long COVID, but still here. And I wrote something that will hopefully either entertain you or make you say lol sob. And I'm a writer, and this is a satire I wrote last week. It's called When Trump Definitely Totally Won the Space Alien Invasion. On Monday morning, around 3 a.m. Eastern Time, the space aliens showed up in their bright hovering ships and began transmitting a message in their own language. By 5 a.m. Eastern Time, the UN, minus the US delegate who didn't show, met to start figuring out what to do. Trump, on the other hand, declared immediate war. These aliens, they're illegals, he said at a gold painted podium. They're very bad people, and we can't make a deal with every space alien because to do so would take, without exaggeration, 2 million years. We're just going to get them out of here, as is our constitutional right. The UN sent a note of peace and welcoming to the alien ships, while top linguists tried to decode the aliens' message. There were no linguists in the US available. All had had their university funding cut and had taken other jobs. Trump reached out to see what the best US scientists had in terms of weapons of war, but half had already been deported for being immigrants, and the remaining half were just hit by the NSF grant freeze. On Tuesday, the aliens sent the same message again to everyone worldwide. Congress met to debate whether the president could declare war without Congress, what with the Constitution saying that Congress is the sole body that can declare war, but in an overwhelming vote of Republicans afraid of being primaried, plus Democrats who thought that if they play nice enough, it would eventually work out, Congress decided it was fine ceding that power entirely. The ACLU filed a suit about an unconstitutional declaration of war, and the courts promised to get to it in a few months. On Wednesday, the Joint Chiefs were called to the Situation Room to present battle plans. Defense Secretary Hegseth presented a bar napkin on which he had scribbled, "Aliens bad, pew pew." A leaked signal chat sent to his babysitter revealed further plan info in the form of several emojis. Meanwhile, the military leadership itself only had a few people left, having kicked out everyone who wasn't a straight white Christian cis man because of DEI, so there weren't many other ideas on the table. The Hegseth plan was chosen with much applause because it was, in Trump's words, beautiful. On Thursday, a translinguist in Bolivia had a breakthrough and decoded the word hello. Every nation but the US transmitted the word hello back to the aliens. Elon Musk paid himself $15 billion to build the Golden Dome, a nationwide defense system that was meant to harmlessly explode incoming weapons midair in prep for the big alien battle. Using Grok, his personal AI chatbot, for targeting, the Golden Dome test instead destroyed 3 American hospitals and a kindergarten. When asked about the results, Musk replied, "That hospital had the woke mind virus. It was very concerning." Fox News reported it as a tremendous win for America. As luck would have it, however, the Tesla that had been shot into orbit in 2018 got close to the biggest alien ship and exploded, as Teslas are wont to do. The alien sent a final message and left. Trump declared victory and scheduled himself a parade. On Friday, an autistic linguist in Sweden decoded the rest of the alien messages, the first of which read, "Hello, humans, we come in peace. please accept our gifts of technology and medicine and art. The second message read, we see you're not interested. Never mind. At Trump's parade speech, he said, Trump saved you all, but will anyone say thank you? No, they won't. People are very ungrateful. Nobody appreciates Trump saving the world. He received thunderous applause and basked in the adoration of the crowd as they cheered for their savior of mankind.
Thank you so much, Effie. That was wonderful. I really got a kick out of that, and it makes me want to cry too because it's so true. So next up, I'm really delighted to have you here, Gregg. Thank you so much for being here. I'll let you take it away and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Amanda. Amanda, I'm very grateful you asked me to do this. I'm supportive of COVID long haulers and people living with long COVID, and I'm against fascism, so it's a perfect match. A couple of things. I'm a person living with HIV. I've been HIV positive since 1995, so that's a long time. I'm also an epidemiologist, and I just wanted to talk about a few things today. One is, our problems didn't start on January 20th, 2025. Anybody who has had COVID is experiencing long COVID or has been alive since the pandemic knows that the failures in our ability to care for each other started long before this year and long before COVID. We have set up a system of governance and living which is unsustainable, so that we can't take care of ourselves, can't take care of those people we love, our communities. I mean, we need to figure out a new way forward, one that's centered on care for all of us, from our most intimate companions all the way to the world we live in. A few things. We have a new coalition called Defend Public Health. It is completely virtual, right? We don't have in-person meetings. We have Zoom meetings, and we have about 3,000 people around the country in about 40 states, and they come from all walks of life. Some of them are public health professionals, some of them are academics, some of the lawyers, some of them are patient advocates, some of them are students. We have a new historians caucus, which just appeared. And the idea is that we have diverse expertise together that we think is going to be important for pushing back over the next 4 years. And I urge anybody who would like to join. There's no fee, there's no membership requirements, as long as you're willing to fight for health justice. You can email defendingpublichealth@gmail.com, and we work in a range of areas, from infectious disease and pandemics to social care, which includes homelessness, substance use, and mental health, to defending institutions like the CDC and your local health departments. We have a communications committee. We have a sexual and reproductive health committee. So we have lots of opportunities for people to get involved. In particular, the things we've done over the past couple of months or 100 days are to devote our efforts towards a campaign to try to beat back the RFK nomination, and got 10,000 letters into Congress. We also worked to fight the Dave Weldon nomination for CDC, notorious anti-vaxxer. That one was a little more successful. We have a campaign right now to sort of save the NIH for anybody who cares about human disease and health. You'll all know that the NIH is being gutted like a fish at the current moment, and if this keeps going on, we will not have an NIH to speak of within the next couple of months and years, which will lead to a lost generation for research, but also a lost generation for cures and treatments for the things we care about. We're also launching a new campaign on CDC next week. So just would urge people to get involved. We need people. We have plenty of people who are living with COVID, long COVID among us. We have plenty of people with varied expertise, and if you're interested in getting involved, just email that email address and we will sign you up. So I think I'm passing it on to
Chantzy. Yeah. Thank you so much, Gregg. I really admire all the work you've been doing, and it's wonderful.
Thanks, Amanda.
Go for it, Chantzy. Introduce your very self.
Thank you, Gregg. I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much, Amanda, for organizing. I'm joining from Canada, but I'm delighted to be here, and I feel your pain. We just had our election here, and we have a liberal government. We have Mark Carney, and although that seems victorious, we've had the largest conservative vote share in years, and the far right is definitely the threat of the far right in Canada has definitely not gone away, and we have some health minimizers who are elected to our parliament. One of them who said he would, I think he had a quote about how he would far rather give his kids COVID than McDonald's or something like that. So I'm quite worried. And what brings me here is just what originally got me involved in COVID advocacy was my two kids, one of whom is neurodivergent like me, and that increases your risk of long COVID, and you're already sort of struggling, and then you have the risk of long COVID in schools, and so it just breaks my heart what we're doing to these children. So many of us, I don't have a formal speech prepared today, but I just wanted to send solidarity to all the parents. I know how hard it has been, and I think the struggles are mostly like hidden by media, but I personally know so many parents who are struggling with their kids chronically being sick with one infection every month. RSV, the next month it's influenza, the next month it's COVID or like co-infections. And, parents don't have a lot of sick days. A lot of them don't have legislated sick days. And so parents are so burnt out, parents are getting sick. We know that mothers in a certain age range more likely to get, or women in a certain age range more likely to get long COVID. So then you're tired already, and then you get long COVID, and then your kids might get long COVID, and we're just not studying that here. There's been a lot of minimizing studies like that have been, a lot of issues. And in the States, at least 5 million children have had reported symptoms of long COVID. And why is this not a crisis emergency? So it's just, I just totally feel for all the parents who are going through this. Relationship issues as well. You have like one person doesn't believe COVID is real, and the other person has long COVID, and they're living together under the same roof. And so, I'm just sending all my love and solidarity to the parents who are continuing to grapple with kids who are affected by this in schools. And personally, I've been involved with my school in trying to bring a HEPA filter in for 12 months now, back and forth. It's been a losing battle. I was told that because of equity, I'm not allowed to bring HEPA filters into my son's class, which doesn't make sense because, like, why wouldn't you want them? Anyway, like, we seismically upgrade half the schools in our city, but so isn't that an equity thing? So I will continue to fight that battle. And we just, I do some volunteer work occasionally with Protect Our Province BC, which is an amazing group of healthcare professionals and advocates. And we just did a briefing actually on long COVID. And that was excellent. So we recorded that, and we had a pediatrician who studies post-viral illness in kids. And so, I'm just really honored that there is a group of concerned physicians. It's a small group. They still wear N95s and they still care. So I think that's all I have to say. I'm just so happy to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. I've always appreciated your voice on socials, speaking to truth and doing so with clarity and with kindness. Like
You too.
I admire that.
Yes.
Oh, sometimes I will lay it down, but every now and then. Well, our next speaker, Paul Hennessy, he's also a very vocal public health advocate, but he is on a plane right now, so he sent a video, and I will share my screen. We'll watch that together. Let's see. We'll do this. I can find them. Where did I put you, Paul? I'm not sure where I put them. Is that it? Sorry, my eyes are not very good anymore. Oh, shoot. It's gonna take me a minute. I'm sorry. There we go. Oh, goodness. Okay. Okay, you know what? Let's do this. Charis, if you don't mind, why don't you go ahead and start in that way, kind of keep it going here, and I'll pull up Paul's video, okay?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Charis. I use they, them pronouns. I am a white person wearing glasses, and I have short brown hair, and I'm wearing a button-up shirt. And next to me is a white woman with light brown hair, wearing earrings and a black shirt. And behind me is a Palestine flag. So thank you all for coming today to this virtual rally. It is a form of organizing that disabled people know well and have been doing effectively for years. And we often hear strangers on the internet say things like, online advocacy isn't real advocacy, but I assure you it's real. I mean, that's what we're doing today. This shows collective action. This rally is an opportunity to get motivated to take small or big actions. It's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to feel less alone amid the chaos. I think, Jordan, you're unmuted. Okay, thank you. So fascism activates a psychophysiological, manipulative, abusive chaos. And I want to say that as a survivor of domestic abuse, reacting by claiming rest and by caring for your body, mind, spirit is a reclaiming of power. I considered talking about how I'm terrified of what will happen to my health if Medicaid disappears. I was actually in the hospital 2 days ago because Medicaid paid for it. So I'm still like recovering from that crash today. So I'm terrified if it's cut. Honestly, though, I've checked out from the news as a way to survive, even though those programs that help me survive are being cut. So instead, I've turned to small scale actions like gardening and tending chickens and helping friends and family. Rather than focusing solely on what's wrong and what needs to change, I want to talk about caring for each other and our own body minds, because community care is more vital than ever. Choosing to keep living and supporting each other via direct action is a form of resistance, even if it's a signal group of friends and chosen family who check in with each other daily to make sure we've had food and water and meds and some rest. We keep each other alive as well as we can, whether we have capacity to do it on a small scale or system-wide. I also want to say that rest is resistance too. It's okay to take a break and center yourself to make sure you are eating and hydrating, taking meds. It's cliche, and fighting fascism is exhausting regardless of rest, but you will be a better activist if you take care of yourself too. And I encourage you all to see that self-care is part of the activism. It's not separate. There are so many simple ways to disrupt and resist this hell. Showing up in your daily life wearing an N95 respirator as able is a form of resistance and shows solidarity with people who can't mask or who are high risk, with Black and brown people, more people, incarcerated people, lots of people. Learning cultural histories that thrived because of cross-movement solidarity, like the Section 504 sit-ins, is as important as being in the streets. Joining mutual aid networks and supporting GoFundMes keeps people alive. Making sure your friends have hydrated and taking meds today is vital. All of you who are here today are participating in a small collective action, even if you take a nap afterwards and take care of yourself for the rest of the day. That counts. We fight fascism together wherever and however we gather. So that's it. Thanks for allowing me to speak today, and free Palestine.
Thank you so much, Charis. That ties in nicely with what I had to say. So, and I'm so glad you're here. It's good to finally meet you, as opposed to just on a little social screen. So thank you. I guess visually interact with you. We'll say that. Next up, who do we have here? Let's see. Sean Mullen was sending a video, but I don't think it got here in time. I'm still watching for it. So James, if you'd like, I'm sorry, James. Gosh, John James, thank you so much for being here. You've been such a guiding light the last few years, and just a wonderful friend. I always appreciate your humility, your kindness, and your knowledge. Thank you. I think you're still muted, John.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. And what I wanted to say is that for advocacy, we should, one major focus should be medical research, because, everybody gets, everybody could get cancer and could die of it, and endless other diseases and health conditions. There are endless possible pandemics that can occur. We've had two major ones already, counting HIV, of course, and just look at some of the headlines. By the way, some of the best sources for researching this have paywalls, which is very unfortunate. But one thing that I found that is useful is perplexity.ai. Just go to that site, perplexity.ai, and it has a free version, which is all I've ever used so far. The paid version is $20 a month, and it would certainly be worth it, but I've stayed with the free version partly because I want to be able to tell people, hey, this is really good. They give you these days, they give you 3 searches on the paid version per day, the first 3 of the day. And so if I want to try it, I can just save up that search for the one of those first 3, but it doesn't really make much difference. So I find that the free version works just about as well. Anyway, well, here is one search I did, new Trump budget plan on medical research. That was the query that I asked. And it gives a summary. I'll just read bits and pieces of it. One thing I like about perplexity.ai is that it gives you both a summary and also links that very much support what it said is summarized, and it's credible links. I don't know just how they do it, but this way you can look up news that's in the paper today. And while it doesn't really replace the paywall information, it'll look for places that aren't paywalled, and some of the paywall information you gets there one way or another. So here I find this is the budget proposal the White House sent to Congress, which of course won't be the final budget, but it really is a danger because Republicans control both houses, both parts of Congress. The NIH budget would be slashed by nearly 50%, from about 48 billion to 27 billion, with consolidation of its 27 institutes and centers into just 5. Well, we know that is not based on any real or serious or real in any way analysis of what's needed. Thus, somebody sat down and came up with it out of thin air. And the elimination of institutes focused on minority health, nursing research, global health, and complementary medicine. And then it gives the 4 links to stories that to sites that support that. And the importance of the links is you can see their authority as to these are credible, well-known links. The CDC's budget would be cut from around $9 billion to $4 billion, eliminating entire divisions such as chronic disease prevention, industry prevention, environmental health, and global health preparedness. And for that, it gives 4 links, which the New York Times, Reuters, Nature, and American Hospital Association. And I checked those, and New York Times, of course, is paywall. Reuters is not. Nature, in this case, is half a paywall. You get about like 3 printed pages worth of the article that you can read, and then it gives you some options for continuing, including Google. I haven't checked that out, but apparently you usually what that means is that you get something like 3 articles a month or something like that, and you can finish what you're reading. Then the American Hospital Association, which is half a paywall too. You get the article, but then to follow up further, you have to join us. So in other words, you can't get it. Anyway, the other thing to consider is that clinical trials and even laboratory studies, in many cases, you can't just stop them and then start them up arbitrarily again. It was the Washington Post that had some numbers about how many. Well, here's in the Washington Post article. More than 20,000 jobs were eliminated. Billions of dollars in scientific research has been threatened or paused, and a budget draft proposes a major restructuring of health and human services. The federal health agency cuts $6.8 billion in grants. The Trump administration has canceled funding for more than 1,200 mental health, public health, and biomedical research projects already underway. Up to 80% of CDC funds are awarded to state and medical health departments. That's Washington Post article. Chronic disease. This was the draft budget obtained by the Washington Post. Now it's been published. The draft has been officially published. It would eliminate all of the CDC's chronic disease programs. These would include programs on programs on smoking cessation, breast and cervical cancer screening, and diabetes prevention. The document says that $500 million will be spent on AHA to combat childhood chronic diseases. Separately, staff members who worked on programs to increase early detection and diagnosis of dementia already lost their jobs. Well, you can see that how this is going to affect people, and it's going to affect individuals, their families, their relatives, their friends. Cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, all sorts of other illnesses. And we need to point this out and make this real to people of what's going on here. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you so much, John. And if anyone knows this progression of advocacy and research, all of this, it is you. It is you, my friend. So thank you for being here. I pulled up Paul's video, so let me go ahead and get that back up here. Maybe. I don't know. Where do you go? There it is.
Hey guys, Paul here. Thanks Amanda for having me today and for putting this together. I so wish I could be there live, but I'm traveling today, but still wanted to contribute something and just wanted to say thank you all for doing so much. I see so much great internet activism for this cause of COVID and long COVID and all the different facets that are involved with it. And thanks for listening to me and for just showing up, because that's so much more than most people just do. And I know it's all overwhelming. I know this new administration has been an adjustment, to put it mildly. You know, from public health to human rights, there's just no way to sugarcoat it. Things are quite bleak. We're in a moment in time that requires recalibration. While Biden's administration and his public health agencies were extremely flawed, there were at least pathways for advocacy, however limited. And, you know, we celebrated little successes along the way. I'm not going to pretend like they also weren't trying to erase disabled people. That's one of the reasons we're in this mess. But now, yeah, this moment in time requires that recalibration and thinking about what works and what can be successful. I certainly don't have the answers to that. I don't expect anyone does right now, because it's just been all so shocking. But it's something to think about if you have the ability. How can we get creative with our advocacy? How can we communicate with an enemy and break through? If you're low on spoons, how can you get others to join the fight against COVID and long COVID and wake people up further within this moment? I will say I've noticed more awareness from the general public, sometimes misguided, but awareness nonetheless. The people who stop caring the second Democrats are in office are suddenly caring again. And while that's frustrating, this fleeting level of concern from the general public can and should be capitalized on. For me, my advocacy focuses on elevating causes, because I don't have long COVID. I love to boost others who are championing causes. I don't have that lived experience, but I know what a crisis it is, and I want to show people that you don't have to have long COVID to be an advocate. And in fact, we need more allies to help champion cause and do some of the heavy lifting. I personally keep coming back to 4 priorities that you know, I like to highlight, and you know, different groups fall into these different categories, and all are, I think, equally important. And those, for me, break down to prevention, treatment, education, social support services. I probably lean more into the prevention side of things. You know, pushing for clean air, vaccine access, masks, etc. But maybe there's one that you feel like you have some passion for. All of these are important, and especially now, I think it's frustrating because while there was some progress towards prevention, treatment, education, social support services, it was not nearly enough. And now it seems that we're just fighting for the scraps that we had. As an ally, I think prevention is kind of a good starting point. You don't have to understand the mechanics of COVID to know that it's bad and you don't want it. It's easy to see that RFK Jr. is attacking vaccines and public health. You know, measles is on the rise. Bird flu is a looming threat. Long-term issues from COVID, still an emerging threat. All these things require multi-layered prevention. And that's kind of a moment we can capitalize on now, I feel. There's obviously a lot going on right now. One issue that I have been pushing for is the BLA approval for Novavax. It has been kind of the perfect testing ground for the anti-vaxxers at HHS, because doesn't have the weight and power of, you know, Pfizer and Moderna. Novavax has kind of gone under the radar to the general public, and clearly the FDA is holding up the BLA approval, kind of test the waters for the vaccine reduction. Not only is that being held up for approval, ACIP is currently considering rolling back vaccine recommendations from everybody, universal, to just the immunocompromised and elderly. Now, we all know the vaccines aren't perfect. We need a multi-layered prevention approach to it. And I think how I've caught a lot of people's attention who are just kind of in the general public and not, knee deep in long COVID advocacy is, hey, here's a very specific example of how they're starting to limit vaccines. They're not going to stop there. They're not going to stop with Novavax. We also can't forget what this is all about, which is helping long haulers who have been dismissed by the previous administration and further erased by the current one. We still need things like monoclonal antibodies, antivirals, and social support services for those who are homebound and or need additional help. Study after study show long-term issues with COVID, whether it be dementia, organ damage, cancers, you name it. It's all still just growing, all the while just being erased. So of course, if you're already here, I think the majority of you probably know about the COVID and long COVID crisis and are awake to that. And now it's time to wake up others. If you're here watching, just curious about what you can do, obviously the first thing you can do is put on a high quality respirator. And then from there, look into COVID and long COVID, see ways you can get involved in those facets of prevention, treatment, education, social support services. If you have contacts at doctors or researchers, philanthropists, we need all hands on deck here because it's legitimately a crisis that is not being discussed. HHS and all those anti-science, anti-health people in charge are not listening, then it's going to be our job to educate the public and wake them up a little bit more. And kind of what a perfect avenue that is, though. Like, hey, they are doing X, Y, and Z to erase disabled people, to erase long COVID, to try to downplay bird flu, measles, you name it. Here's ways you can get involved. So let's continue to be loud. So that ACIP meeting I mentioned is going to be in June. I will be posting ways to get involved through public comments and talking points, links to do that, making sure it's accessible and easy. And there will be plenty of other things I will be pushing for along the way on the state, local, and federal level. A victory anywhere is a victory for all of us. I'm a servant to the cause. If you have something you want elevated, if you want to brainstorm, let me know. I'm here to help. And we're in this fight together. If you're tuning in and watching this, it means you haven't given up. Neither have I. We may not have all the answers right now, but we are smart and we will damn sure find a way to get through this by fighting alongside each other. Thanks, guys, and thanks, Amanda.
And so I'm so glad Paul was able to be here with us virtually today. He's been such a powerful advocate online, always providing information for you to go and contact the CDC, contact this person, call them out. You can literally call them or email them. So you can find him at Polly Pandemic on Twitter and on TikTok. He's not on Blue Sky yet, I don't think. And from here, I'm going to turn it over to Chris. Chris Kocher, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks, Amanda. Thanks for having me. I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience leading COVID Survivors for Change, a little bit about story sharing and the powers of stories and how you sort of can use your story, the power of your story to connect with your audience. And then a little bit about just in this moment, this very, very difficult moment that we find ourselves in, and sort of some of the things that I've been wrestling with and thinking about and reflecting on as we sort of like look for a path forward and reconnecting with people we disagree with and trying to build to, the better future that we all want to see. But I think, to start, just sharing a little bit, I know Amanda because I was the executive director of COVID Survivors for Change, and we are an organization that provided no-cost trauma-informed support programming, bringing in trauma experts, mental health professionals. We started a weekly support group back in 2020 called COVID Connections that's still running each week, that Amanda was a leader on and a peer facilitator as part of that. We worked on connecting people to story sharing and advocacy opportunities, and I think where we really felt like our voices were most impactful was in trying to raise awareness about the 300,000 children who lost parents or caregivers to COVID, and advocating for policies like baby bonds that provide childhood savings accounts. In California, we were part of a coalition of groups that helped advocate for $115 million. So really trying to get like concrete, tangible financial and mental health resources for the most vulnerable populations, for the folks that are in most need of that. And then also just the remembrance and supporting so much of the amazing and powerful remembrance opportunities and events that were happening. Just last month, actually, several of us were in Albany for a recognition day where they were spotlighting some of the folks who had lost lives to COVID and that were living with long COVID. And I was there with a couple of the other New Yorkers who are part of that. I'm zooming in from Queens in New York City. So this issue was always, very important to me because I was, living in the epicenter of the epicenter, right? And prior to that, I built and led the Gun Violence Survivor Network at Everytown for Gun Safety Milestone in Action, and right now leading an organization called Extreme Weather Survivors, which provides similar support to people who've been impacted by climate-fueled extreme weather disasters and helping them advocate for stronger policies. So I think that the way that I think about this work in many ways, and I think I could go on and on about the lessons learned and the things that people the challenges that people have as they are negotiating. How do you, when the personal is political and vice versa, and how do you move from sharing your story that is just for you to sharing your story with others to inspire change, to inspire hope, to create political pressure for people to move to action. And so those are all sort of things when we think about stories, how does that impact the conversation around politics? But I think, what I like to think about is the three things sort of that, what are the three things that we're always trying to balance in an organization when you are working on something that is emotional, that is political, that is personal. So those three things are care, community, and change. And so I think of care as how are you taking care of yourself? How are you taking care of each other? How are you connecting with mental health experts or physical health experts to help you take care of yourself, prioritize your well-being? How are you a leader in showing up to others who have been impacted so that together, we're providing that support to each other. And so that when one person needs to step back for any number of reasons, for exhaustion, because of work commitments, because of personal commitments, that there is a group of people who are able to carry that forward. And prioritizing care is a really important part of making sure that's possible, by taking care of yourself and taking care of each other. And I always think, we would talk at all the organizations, right? And especially in this moment, how can you make time for self-care when there's so much going on? And it is always the last thing. And I say this as someone who doesn't always do the best job at that, but I say that because it is really important. And when you fall short on that, you wind up falling short on the other piece of it as well. The second thing to think about is community. So how are you showing up for others in your community? Like I said, with COVID Survivors for Change, we created that COVID Connections community each week, meeting with mental health experts to provide facilitated support and conversation. And we had, earlier this year, we had a moment where, or sorry, last year, where we said, we sat down as a group in the community and said, is this still a value, and would you like to continue to meet? We had originally been meeting weekly, and that had dropped down to twice a month. And then we tried for a while to do it once a month. And the feedback from the community just last night or Thursday night was actually, let's go back to twice a month, right? So I think being in community with each other, providing support for each other, doing it in a way that protects your well-being, right? So you can show up for others. It's the whole oxygen mask, putting your oxygen mask on first before you're able to take care of others. But really thinking about what is that community and how can you show up for each other. And then finally, the third part of it is change, which is really the part that I'm always most excited about. How can we use our personal power, our personal stories to advocate and push for change? How can we make sure that those who are in positions of power, whether they are elected officials or cultural leaders or any other of the folks that have power in this country, how can we make sure that they are hearing your stories, and that those stories are being heard in a way that informs policies? How can we push allied organizations to make sure that they are also prioritizing the policies of people with lived experience and those perspectives to make the best policy decisions possible? And so some of the things that I like to think about around stories and seeing stories shared in the political space is really understanding that sharing your story is an act of leadership. Whether that is talking to media, talking on a call like this, talking to friends and family, talking to local groups. If you are doing the hard work of sharing your story so that someone to build connection with another person so that they can understand what your lived experience is, that's leadership, right? And that doesn't mean that it's easy. It doesn't mean that we should always be doing it because, right, you have to think about what is safe for you, your mental well-being. It's courage, exactly. It's safe for you, but also sometimes, especially in this moment, sharing your story isn't safe, right? Because a lot of the, whether it's xenophobia or homophobia or transphobia or any of the other divisive phobias that we're seeing right now. So thinking about like what is safe for you, but if it is something that you can do, I think about this a lot with my family that I have political differences about. And after November, I really challenged myself to think about how am I showing up? How am I building bridges? How am I connecting? And I know obviously I'm saying that from a position of privilege, but I think we owe it to the vision of the future that we want to see, that we are challenging ourselves to see, are we building bridges? Are we looking for shared humanity and connection in a way, of course, always again, right, that's protecting our safety. But making sure and thinking about how you can show up for others, right? So it's not just about, like I said, sharing your story for yourself. It's about getting the person that you're talking to do something, right? It's inspiring them. It's giving them a concrete action that they can take, whether it's call their elected official, whether it's change a behavior. Those are the things, right, that story sharing is about. And so when it moves from something that's for you and for healing for yourself to something that you are sharing as part of a larger political space, then thinking about like how can you shape your story and share your story to impact others and to inspire others. Thinking about just, I think about this a lot, having worked on, gun violence and COVID and now climate change. Thinking about the impossibility and the difficulty of understanding the sweeping impacts of the policies that we care about. So people can't understand, they cannot grasp. We're not, as humans, set up to emotionally understand millions of people impacted. But they can understand your story, one story, a singular story, if it's shared with empathy and in a way to build bridges. So I think about that a lot. How are we sharing stories? So one, your story so people can understand a little bit better. What does that mean when we say millions of lives are impacted? And then the last thing I'll just share is the thinking about how the tone of your story. So especially again, all these issues, right? I would always say we talk a lot about how our loved ones were impacted, how our loved ones died, but let's talk about how they lived and let's celebrate they lived. If we're talking about lost lives, if we're talking about health impacts, what has these policies cost you in the way that you live your lives? And I think when we are sharing our stories with joy, when we can, which is not always possible. When we can, with celebration, with joy, with hope, with positive emotion, that is another one of those shortcut ways to bring people in and to make connections. And this is not to say that this is what you have to do or you should do, but if you can do it, in my experience, I have seen it build bridges. And so thinking about if this is something that you are not in a space to do, it's not safe for you, it's not, you're not in a place where you can share with that framework, then that's okay. Pass the baton to someone else who feels like they can do that. And I think, that's part of what calls like this are for. This is about, in these hard moments, in these hard days, being in community with people who get it, who get you. So when you do go out and you are talking to people who have different values and you are trying to build those bridges, you're coming back to a community that can recharge your battery. So thanks Amanda so much for building this space, and for all of your leadership and kindness and the so many of the conversations, often late at night, walking around my neighborhood that we've had over the years. And I'm just, as always, so inspired for all the work that you're doing. Thanks, everyone.
Well, thank you, Chris. Yeah, I laughed when you said self-care earlier, and I thought, the two of us are like, we need to listen to our own work.
Totally. No, totally. That's, yeah.
How many midnight calls? Thank you again for just everything. You've been such a guiding light the last 5 years. Wow, 5 years. I'm going to turn it over to HEPA. Go for it. Holy erotic propaganda arson.
Hey, Amanda, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for being here. And thank you, Chris. It's actually appropriate that you were talking about storytelling and that some people are already no longer able to safely have faces and voices. So it's appropriate to hand the conversation over to an anonymous transdisciplinary, somewhat chaotic arts collective. Yeah, so I wrote big today because I saw the capacity was 1,000 and thought, oh, okay, this needs to be projecting. So I think I'll compensate a bit for this by adding some marginalia. All right. May I always remember the soil under my name. Thank you, everyone who's here, everyone who's doing the work. And in a vascular pandemic, every still beating heart is a victory. We don't arrive alone. We're held by movement elders and ancestors from ME/CFS, HIV/AIDS, EDS, Lyme, and more, and countless patient advocates before the industrialization of medicine and the burning of healers. Let's begin by tending the body. This practice is adapted from Urban Tantra by Barbara Corliss. It's not spicy. Well, breath can be spicy, we know this. And it welcomes disabled, chronically ill, queer, trans, and neurodivergent bodies exactly as they are. It can be done sitting down, lying down, or however is most safe for you. Now, if the pelvic region, not spicy, promise, isn't accessible, choose any safe place in your body, maybe just your little finger, and breathe. Let your body be where it is. Let gravity hold a little more of you. Feel the weight under your seat, your spine, your skin. You don't need to breathe deep. Just notice the breath that's already there. If it's hard to breathe, maybe that can be part of the wisdom. If you're tired, maybe the tired can be sacred. Imagine the base of your spine as a garden. And today, you light a small candle there. Not to fix it, just to say, you're not abandoned. If you feel sadness, allow it to move if it wants. If you feel numb, that's okay too. If you feel warmth or charge or aliveness, let it remind you your body wants to be here. Stay with that for one breath more than you think you can. Then say quietly to yourself, I tend my roots. So we're here because we are witnessing systems that were already extractive to begin with, being repurposed for eugenics, abandonment, and control. But we have a choice other than assenting to our collective social murder. Like our ancestors, genetic, movement, artistic before us, we can build something else. We can create parallel structures, reclaiming food, shelter, health, memory, and art from state weaponization. And disabled, chronically ill people can be the architects. Now, this is a bit of marginalia here. There have been ongoing for a while conversations within the COVID competent community about parallel systems, even before it became an emergency and we started seeing the ways in which our forced dependency on the state could be weaponized against us for our obedience, or that we could be erased through our dependence through them. This is something that I'm not expert in. I'm just somebody who looks and synthesizes a lot of information and tries to reflect it back, hoping that people more expert weigh in. It does seem we have a lot of very talented people who are able to craft solutions very well. We have some people who are more well-resourced materially. We have other people who can bring all sorts of expertise on the table, because one thing about our movement is we have a lot of professionals who can no longer practice their craft in the same way. And it seems that one thing that might be useful is getting all stakeholders to the table in trust to take steps forward. That's my marginalia. Now, where art comes in, I'm going to extemporaneous a bit, which I normally don't do, but art can help bring us together in a way that bypasses logic. We need logic and we need reasons to do things, even when there's urgency, even when we know it has to happen. There's something about art that can get through on a symbolic, emotional level that can also bring us together. If anyone here has read Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, how did they start a mutual aid group in the midst of climate and political collapse? They had an 18-year-old with a spiritual vision and a book, and they made some art together on the road to Northern California. So something really interesting happened on April 24th. Spooky, actually. So our collective decided we were going to stage a performance. Some of our members have been doing arts adjacent advocacy for a couple of years now, raising awareness and trying to, being honest, stealing some of the leaves out of ACT UP's playbook, trying to make a big noise and see who listened. And at some point, I don't know if it's burnout or the situation or needing to viscerally cry out that we're still alive, we decided to make art. We set a date for a one-time only performance, Wake Up and Smell the COVID, an evening without Eric Bogosian. That's a whole thing and a long game. We can talk about it another time. And he was not affiliated with the project nor endorsed it. And, you know, we put something together in a month. Some of us know some things about theater, some of us don't. And for something that was as cobbled together with duct tape as it was, we had about like 90 signups and between 50 and 60 people were in the room just for our little monologue show. That was already huge. And we got the feedback from a lot of people how healing they felt it just to be held and just to have art being made that represented their perspectives. And if anyone here comes from the humanities or social sciences and knows about the power of representation. For people who are trying to find a place in the world, it's huge. Now, the spooky part was that the Sick Times did a review of our show. Betsy and Heather Hogan are great. And when the review came out, they had reviewed not one, but two shows that night, both based in New York. We did not know about the other show, which was by Anna R.G., Air Change Per Hour. Check out the review. They're going to also, they're part of, not exactly a collective something, but that provides air filters for performance. We did not know that this performance was happening. They didn't know about us. There's something really odd about on a Thursday in April, two pieces of COVID-aware performance came up. There's some kind of odd synchronicity. I just want to make here. And it feels like we have an ecosystem going, and one thing that art can do is potentially being part of the small s spiritual secular glue that maybe can hold something as ambitious as parallel systems together. That's what I got. I've probably gone over time, but you know what? I just want to indulge myself and use this as like workshopping a bit because it's fun to write. All right. So, so back, huh?
Oh, no, keep going. I accidentally ran over someone in one of our last rallies, but keep going if you're not done.
Yeah. Workshopping, since we opened with writing, we may as well. Okay, so if there are any Octavia Butler readers here, you know that back on script. You know that speculative fiction can predict and authorize new futures. To that end, we're offering a tentative excerpt from our in-development piece, Mask for Pleasure, an evening that could include, but is not affiliated with, Eric Bogosian. Long game. It's a call-in without demand for anyone ready to face reality, consent, and the strange pleasure of decay. Content note, this excerpt includes themes of death, decomposition, state-administered euthanasia, SARS-CoV-2 sequelae, and eroticized depictions of COVID-marked bodies. Please tend your energy and boundaries. One character, for obvious reasons, is Armenian American. We're actively seeking a paid authenticity consultant and welcome guidance. We've done our best as non-Armenian creators to approach this with respect, reciprocity, and care. If you know someone, please send them our way. So, in a future that resembles 1950s post-war Germany, orderly, muted, quietly wounded, behind the glass, life finally goes on. Masks are worn with care, the air is filtered. The crisis is over, but the bodies remember. A survivor now tends a garden of wild berries. The state handles death elsewhere, quietly. Her work is not legal, but it's necessary. A young visitor arrives, a soft-spoken entry-level death administrator, raised in the afterworld of protocols and soft forgetting. But are they really looking for permission to feel? Lucine. You know, darling, I used to have a voice like yours, like a database mourning its own breath. They told me when I got marked, I could go out clean. That's what they called it. Die like a patient, not a parable. But I told them I didn't survive 6 known infections and my lover's lungs collapsing in tandem just to get bleached into heaven. No, I want to rot. I want to blister. I want to ooze. I want a mushroom to grow from the inside of my thigh and wink at God. You look like someone who's never been allowed to stink. Oh, baby. They scraped your grief out and called it clarity. You think the state gave you language. It didn't. It gave you a muzzle shaped like a mirror. What if I told you I learned to give love to every mark this virus gave me, even when I wanted to unzip my skin and run away? What if I told you I want you to see me breaking down, turning wet, glorious, grotesque, impossibly real? What if I told you I don't want to be remembered? I want to be grown through. You came here to tell me, and I want you to feel me inside. No, you came here to kill me. And I want you to feel me inside your guts for the rest of your institutional life. Because your whole job is to make death antiseptic. And I'm telling you, this body, marked, breath-lost, virus-ravaged, transed, and entangled, this is what sacred tastes like now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, Hepa. I really appreciate it. Our next guest, she isn't able to be here today. She has pretty significant long COVID, but she did send a couple of poems to read for today, and they're very poignant. They're short, but she really gets to the heart of the matter. The first one is called "Enemy of the Gods." I'm sorry, her name is Kristin Houlihan. You can find her on most socials, Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook. She's a beautiful person. The first poem is "Enemy of the Gods." The malicious trickster swapped all my soup spoons for slotted and left me with a bowl of broth. Lurking in the shadows, he's always ready to steal a spoon or two or add to the collection, only to snatch the newfound bounty from between my fingertips. Precious vessel disappearing like a mirage as I reach toward it, or disintegrating in my hands like the ancient wrappings of a mummy. Shape-shifting devil torments me, watching my pathetic, weakening efforts to realize my inventory. Loki laughs. And the second one is called "Abigail Asks the Oracle." Virgin magic 8-ball, fresh from the box. My heart fissures as you ask your first question. Will mommy get better? I hold my breath, knowing there's no such thing as magic, but hoping anyway. Yes, definitely. The toy is much more certain than I am. And with that, I wanted to share a few thoughts. I had planned to read something else, but something sprang into my mind earlier today. So I'll start with that, and I'll just sort of, I'll glue in the basics that I wanted to reshare today. So I don't often make my son Sam do things. He gets enough of that. Sometimes though, I'll be firm and tell him, "No, buddy, we're doing this." When the actor Paul Reubens passed away 2 years ago, we watched Pee-wee's Big Adventure. He hates watching new movies, but this was special. Paul Reubens was a good friend of Morgan Fairchild, and she's in the movie, and Sam loves her, so we watched. When it was over, he said, "Mom, that was actually really funny." I know, it's a funny movie. And he said, "But except for that kissing scene at the end, that was gross." I told Morgan about that, and she got a kick out of his opinion. Sam was pretty open to going to the opera last year. He was engrossed in Romeo and Juliet, although he didn't know the story. At halftime, which is what we call intermission, he asked, "Mom, what happens in the second act?" "Well, buddy, things kind of go downhill." He said, and I told him sort of what goes on in the story. "Oh my God, Mom, we can't stay for that." And I laughed, but I was okay with going home. He got his feet wet in the art. And this art form is so dear to me that I fought ugly tears in the opening sequence. I wasn't prepared for the flood of emotions and the beauty on stage in front of me, things I used to do for others. Now, last night, Sam did not want to go. He didn't even bring anything more formal than cut-off jean shorts and a Minecraft t-shirt. We went anyway. Perhaps he wasn't dressed or prepared to the standard others expected, but we still showed up. Before the lights dimmed, I gave the synopsis of the first act. A beautiful but icy princess in Peking, turned out, refuses to marry, opposing her father's wish and ancestral legacy. Forced marriage by abduction killed her ancestor, Princess Lu Ling. As a vessel of that spirit, Princess Turned Out vehemently protects herself. Her father, however, tells her it is a sacred oath. So to honor her father's wishes, Turned Out issues an edict. She will marry any prince who can correctly solve all 3 riddles she puts before him. If he fails, he faces execution. The opening scene is nothing short of a maelstrom of people that people in sound that fills every crevice of the opera hall. The crowd, frenzied by bloodlust, calls for the Prince of Persia to be brought forth. He failed the princess's challenge, and he must now lose his head. The grindstone is brought out, and the prince is dispatched. Now, there are few stage experiences as gripping as this scene, and Sam was blown away. The awe continued into the second act, marked by one of the most beautiful set changes I've ever seen. I told him, though, that the best was yet to come. Calaf, a vanquished prince of Tartary, has struck the gong, indicating his desire to vie for the princess. The third act happens after he has passed the test, infuriating the princess, but he sees how upset she is, and he offers a deal. If you can find out my name by sunrise, I will let you kill me, and you don't have to marry me. You win. The act opens with one of the most beautiful and well-loved arias in all of opera, Nessun Dorma, None Shall Sleep. And I have chills as I'm speaking this. It's just so beautiful. So TLDR, all ends well, mostly. Only 2 people die in this opera. And the stage roars with music and life, and there's even a confetti drop. Sam flew out of his seat with the rest of the audience and said, "This was totally worth it, Mom." He later also said it was great, but not as good as Romeo and Juliet last year. And I think I've done my work here, people. How many opportunities do we miss because we feel ill-prepared, unpresentable, uninterested, afraid of doing something new, something we don't know? And as we face these dark times, I hope we all carry with us the knowledge that no one person is too insignificant, too ill-equipped, too incapable, or too unworthy to effect change. We all have a role in challenging authoritarianism, whether it's attending or hosting a rally, contacting our elected officials, helping those on the front lines, being on the front lines, sharing on socials, or just holding the world in our thoughts. It can even be self-care or community care. No act is too small. We need that diversity of talent and callings to get through this, to protect what is good, to ensure that diversity continues and is valued. Think on your talents and play to those. If you need help with that, reach out. Ask what others see as your strengths and take action. We can speak inspiring words every other weekend here, but we also need to follow that with action. I'm from Missouri, the show me state. We believe what we see more than what we hear. One of my anthropology advisors in college always said, people have no idea what they're doing. You can ask them and they'll tell you what they think they're doing, but to really know, you have to observe. So go be what you want to see in the world. Do the things, show up messy, show up dazed and confused. Just show up. When others see what you are doing, especially if it matches your words, they too will be inspired to act. And we need everyone. And I'm often asked, what keeps me going? What keeps me hopeful? It's a blend of Buddhist philosophy of impermanence and what's called the Stockdale paradox, a technique to navigate challenging and ambiguous times by combining the ability to confront the brutal facts of your current reality, even as you maintain unwavering faith that you will prevail in the end, no matter how distant it is. But when I was homeless, I told myself, I will get out of this tent. It really, really sucks, but I will get out of this tent. And I did. I got out of the tent. James Stockdale was a pilot who was shot down over North Vietnam and taken prisoner. At the onset, he mentally prepared himself for at least 5 years of hell. It turned out to be 7. He was tortured repeatedly, as were many others, and he watched many of them die. He later told writer Jim Collins, "I never lost faith in the end of the story. I never doubted not only that I would get out, but also that I would prevail in the end and turn the experience into the defining event of my life, which, in retrospect, I would not change." When asked who didn't make it, he replied, "Oh, that's easy, the optimists." They were the ones who said, "We're going to be out by Christmas." And Christmas would come and Christmas would go. And then they would say, "We're going to be out by Easter." And Easter would come and Easter would go. And then Thanksgiving, and then it would be Christmas again. And they died of a broken heart. Sound familiar? At the beginning of the pandemic, I bolstered myself with the same mantra. This won't be days or weeks or even months. I was fully prepared to be an indoor cat for as long as it took, whatever that was. I wrote papers about this very thing in college, very lengthy papers on HIV in Thailand, Ebola in West Africa. Yeah, right? I totally hear you, Hepa. But I wrote very long papers on this kind of thing. And I worked with students actually from Hubei province, which is where Wuhan is. And it just felt like so many so many roads in my life were connecting for this one moment. And I knew we're in for a long ride. I just assumed I would be inside for that ride. When you're thinking about where you are with your own long COVID journey, where you are with any of this journey, don't think about what is gone. When my hometown of Joplin, Missouri was destroyed by a tornado in 2011, we quickly realized there is no such thing as rebuilding. It's just building in a new reality. And that's exactly what we have to do now. Build new lives in a new reality with bodies that seem foreign in a different world, or a world more exposed. It means letting go of things no longer meant for us and opening up to what is. It's hard and it's scary. And maybe that looks like not working or not driving. Maybe that looks like using a mobility aid or accepting help in some other form. Maybe that looks like using every voice and every privilege we have. It means getting rid of comfort. But whatever it is, you're not alone in this. And I guess if there's a bright side to any of this, it's power in numbers. Stockdale said, "You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be." So throughout your timeline, and even the word recovery, but hang on to the hope that you can make your new reality fulfilling in some way. And I thank you all for being here. And I want to go briefly into, okay, so you probably saw Guerilla Advocacy and thought, what is that? What exactly are we like? What's going on here? It's something that I started doing just sort of on my own about 4 or 5 years ago. It's hard to think about how can one person reach out to the world? How can one person reach the halls of power, especially when you are reaching those halls of power from a tent in the woods? And I found out, oh gosh, actually Twitter is a great way. I was chilling in the woods one day. It was September 2021. And I noticed someone prominent who also has alopecia chatting about National Alopecia Awareness Day. So I chimed in. It was Ayanna Pressley, Representative Ayanna Pressley. High five, Queen. Alopecia. She was talking about alopecia as a woman in the dating world. I said, no, alopecia is a great filter. You are connected with people who are genuine and good, people that have an interest in wanting to connect with you. And she followed me, and I was like, wait, what? Did she just follow me? I have like 150 followers, and she just followed me? What? And then her aide followed me the next week, and I realized, oh my God, we're gonna talk. She wasn't there just for the alopecia. She saw my post about long COVID, and she listened. And I thought, gosh, who else can I get? And she's now a co-sponsor on the Treat Long COVID Act. So I took to Twitter, and I went all the way. I still do this. As long as those DMs are open, I look for anyone who's in office, anyone who's running for office, anyone adjacent, anyone connected. And if those DMs are open, I am in them. And I'll just send a quick note. What do you know about long COVID? And I attach an article that people kind of can't walk past. The title is "From a Tent in the Woods, this Missouri woman speaks for her fellow long haulers." It's like, what is going on here? From a tent in the woods? And I think my favorite response was from Rebecca Mitchell, a state representative from Northern Georgia, who said, she popped right back. She's like, not enough. And I just kept going and going and going, connecting. And I thought, wow, I feel like I'm making much more progress this way than trying to go in through a formal advocacy network. Maybe this is my jam now. And it's something that almost anyone anywhere can do. You can literally be in a tent in the woods. You can be flat in bed. You can reach, and we've got so many great networks now on Blue Sky, Twitter. Twitter is anywhere, any opportunity you have to reach out and just ask, what do you know about this? And never assume that people know or don't know, because you don't know what they knew, what they don't know you don't know what they've got in their brains. So just ask. So that way it eliminates that, and it opens up a dialogue. And this has worked not just with people who I am pretty sure would agree with my stances. I mean, I went into a Twitter space one night. The title caught me. I can't remember what it was, but I realized, oh, this is a very conservative group here. I'm going to see what's going on. There were about 100 people in. So I went into the room and I asked for a microphone. They gave one to me. I was kind of surprised. And I raised my little Twitter hand and I sat and waited as people kind of droned on, as you know, as they do in politics. And finally someone interceded and said, look, she's been waiting for a while. She's been so patient. Let her speak. And I said, thank you. We don't have citizen representation anymore. And that's a problem. Here's why. I told them where I was, Tenton Woods, and why, long COVID, and how this has affected not just me, but millions of us worldwide, and how I'm not the only one in this position. And they listened, they actually listened. So I told them, look, if I'm not in your DMs yet, I soon will be. And one of the loudest, longest talkers came back and said, you're not in my DMs. And I said, well, why don't you go back and look? He did. And he said, oh, you messaged me last week. And I said, yes, I did, didn't I? So here's the deal. We sent you to DC to do a job. You're supposed to listen to us and then go speak for us. But you forgot about the listening part, and that's not okay. So if you're not going to do that, you need to go home. And after that, they were all in my DMs. And it was, I mean, as you can see, we are in a very precarious position now, but never be afraid to approach other people, regardless of where they stand. And it's not something you have to have fanfare with. A lot of people are genuinely willing to listen. And it's an uphill battle, and it's a slow climb. But one by one, spread across millions of us worldwide, that's how we make the change. Each person matters, each voice matters. So if you, I don't know, has anybody else tried this in the last few weeks since we started talking about it? If you have, let me know, and I'd love to hear your story. Anyone? Oh, Emily, yes, please go for it.
I live in the county, which is, I talked about it on the Facebook group, but we have county commissioners because we don't have mayors because there's not enough people. There's more tobacco plants than people, because that's fine. And so I wrote to our 5 white, old, mostly balding male commissioners. And we're in an area, the area that I live in, incredibly conservative. I would say a 2-to-1 ratio of American flag to Confederate flags, which is never a great place to be in, especially because it's in Maryland. So like, you know, we were Union, whatever. Anyways, so the leadership is super conservative. Masking was political since 2020. I'm only back here because I have long COVID, obviously. And so I'm living with my parents' house. So I wasn't here in 2020, blessedly, but it was a mess, and it's been a mess this whole time. The public health page doesn't have anything about masking at all. There's no tests. I give my doctors their free masks because the place that used to have free masks, the library doesn't have them anymore. And so it's like, as everywhere, it's bleak. And so I wrote our commissioners, I was like, hey babes, I'm really sick. What are you guys doing? And 2 of them got back to me like immediately. It took me like a week to write the email, and they got back to me in like 2 minutes. I'm like, stop. I need time, please. And so one of them said, you know, I'm so sorry. There's not much we can do. Like keep up the good fight, which is whatever. And then another one said, well, like, you know, we're kind of constrained or constricted. I can't remember the word that he used. But the state and the federal decide kind of like what we do. And I was like, oh, but wouldn't you know there's a lot that you can do. So I'm working on if I was healthy, this would be done in a day. I used to write policy memos in grad school before I had to, you know, come slowly die in Maryland, or maybe get better. So it's been a while. I have a friend from the local mask block helping me with sources. We're making everything as an incredibly neutral, non-political, informational as possible, but the 5 things we're focusing on are clean air, specifically in public spaces and schools, and for getting information out. So like PSAs, what long COVID is, how COVID spreads. It's not fall mites, it's not a sneeze, it's airborne. Accessible public spaces, so free masks in all public spaces, and you know, you can get that from the stockpile. So that's free. So okay, and the cost. So that's free. PSAs are free. Air filter stuff, that's low. And there's a lot of really cool free training programs about airborne things in schools. There's one out of Australia. There's CR boxes, which I'm highlighting, but those are around $100 a classroom, but I'm pitching them as science projects. And then the fourth thing we're doing is knowledgeable and accessible medical care. And so that looks like encouraging masking and trainings in our local, it's a medical desert. It was a medical desert in the best of times, and now it's nothing. And then the last one is something. And wait, I'm on my laptop. Hold on. I have it all up. The trainings and then free respirators everywhere for county schools. I think I'm only doing 5 things. Cool. Yes, so that's what we're doing. So I'm hoping it'll be done soon. And we'll send it off, and everything is, yeah, either it's free because people will do free things, especially if you give it to them heavily cited. The goal is to have it be simple. Man, I have all of this written down, but yeah, all that to say, I emailed people and they got back to me and said that I would like to do things that if we can do them. And I said, oh yes, you can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. That is fantastic. That's exactly, you opened that conversation, and that's everything. I think the hardest part is initiating that. Just diving in and doing it. Whatever way works best for you. It doesn't have to look like my way. It doesn't have to look like anyone else's way. What works best for you? Play to your talents. Go for it, Hepa. Oh, I think I lost up. Oh, there you are. Okay.
There we go. Just finding my unmute button. So speaking of acting collectively, slightly to the side of art making, one thing that has happened in the past couple of years is that the coordination of people in the arts has firmed up a lot, transnationally as well. And I think this is one strength of the fact that we do online organizing, is that we're able to like traverse contexts, and sometimes that can be quite useful. So at the moment, there's people in that ecosystem who are doing different things. Sally Witcher, OBE, in the UK, disability advocates created in the arts, INN, and like finally has created a best practices framework that can be applied to venues, theaters, performance spaces, which is huge because there's otherwise not sort of sound occupational guidance. And it also is like a legitimate public facing way to be doing this, because like there's lots of areas to be engaging. And really one thing that arts can do is it is that bypassing the cognitive. There is like an emotional investment that we have in arts that we get cracked open by arts. People care about it. And for real reasons, it's something to be protected. So the capacity also for organizing across borders and like maybe collectively acting is also possible. I'm just gonna put it out there. I think that the 1993, was it? The Tony Awards, where Jeremy Irons wore an AIDS awareness red ribbon. This action is repeatable. I think there's enough people who are industry and adjacent, and maybe ways to, it would need to be sort of reaching in as it was at the time to make something like that happen or similar. So I'm a little bit, okay, this link was shared publicly. I'm not sure whether to share strategy, but at the same time, it's one of these things that would need community buy-in. So these kinds of things where there's pre-existing platforms to raise awareness in a big way in venues that people care about, like the structures are building. So just want to put that out there as an update, and I don't know, getting some energetic feedback. Anyway, thanks for holding the space, Amanda. Thanks everyone for being here.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad you're able to make it again. Effie, go for it.
This actually dovetails with what Hepa was saying quite well. It turns out there are lots of surprise places where you can do an advocacy. I had a story that I have a story about disability access, rage, and then catharsis that came out paywalled 2 weeks ago, and it's coming out for free in 2 weeks. And it was supposed to come out in October, and it's about the ADA. And I mentioned on social media that, oh my gosh, I don't think we're going to have an ADA by October. And I talked to the editor, and not only did he push it up, but he also said, let's make sure we have a call to action for advocacy in your bio. And we're going to update it twice, once before it comes out paywalled, and then again before it comes out for free so that we can stay up to date with whatever that call to action needs to be, which is amazing. And it would have never occurred to me that I can use my bio as a place to say, and hey, if you care about the stuff in this story, just go here. But it turns out that they let you write anything in there. So I'm taking this as my own personal call to action to be more creative in where I can insert these little things.
That is fantastic. You're so right. You can put it into your bio. That's and I know like on socials we're limited with how many spaces we get in that, and yeah, that's something I try to carefully craft into mine. But that's a great way to go about it, and I'm excited to read this. Congratulations. Well, I want to thank everyone for being here today. We are right at time, so we'll do this again in 2 weeks. My goal is to do it maybe like once a month, maybe every other week. We'll see. Like Chris and I were saying, we're really not all that great at self-care. We need to work on that. So I'm going to work on that. Let's all work on that, and community care. So I'll go ahead and end this now. And thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next time. Bye.